I saw that you were getting very emotional. Do you know anything about your house?
It's all burned down. Everything, my kids' school, our community, our neighbors' houses, everything is just burned down. Everything is gone.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. But the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty, and upon every one that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. And upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan, and upon all the high mountains, and upon all the hills that are lifted up, and upon every high tower, and upon every fenced wall, and upon all the ships of Tarshish, and upon all pleasant pictures. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day.
Everything is just burned down. Everything is gone.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Welcome to Hidden History and Biblical Mystery. I'm your host, Larry, and today we're going to uncover something extraordinary that's been hiding in plain sight. We're going to challenge everything you think you know about Mount Hermon, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why this mountain's true location isn't where mainstream scholars claim it is. Let me start with something that's going to sound shocking. The biblical Mount Hermon is not in the modern Middle East. It's right here in California, and I'm going to prove it to you using science, ancient texts, and geological evidence that mainstream scholars either ignore or misinterpret. Let's begin by looking at what the ancient texts tell us about Mount Hermon. The Book of Enoch, a text conveniently swept under the rug by the so-called experts, describes it as ground zero, the place where the Watchers, not just a handful, but a full-blown battalion of 200 fallen angels, first stormed onto earth. As Enoch 6 chillingly recounts, and they were in all 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. These celestial renegades didn't just visit, they descended on Mount Hermon like a cosmic biker gang choosing their turf. They forged a pact right there on that sacred peak, a demonic handshake agreeing to shack up with human women and spill the beans on forbidden knowledge. Think of it as the universe's first really bad reality TV show, filmed on location at Mount Hermon. The texts are explicit, folks. This mountain wasn't just some scenic overlook. It was ground zero for mankind's original sin, the gaping hole in reality through which beings from another dimension barged into our world. This wasn't just a mountain, it was a doorway. The very name Hermon itself, dripping with irony considering what went down there, comes from the Semitic root rarm, meaning sacred. Sacred, try sacrilegious crime scene if you want to be accurate, but sacred is what they went with. A designation that becomes darkly humorous when you grasp its true location and history. Ancient texts, not just one, but multiple, record different names for this mountain: Hermon, Syrian, and Senir. This name dropping from multiple cultures isn't just trivia night fodder. It tells us something crucial. This place wasn't some backwater hill. It was a landmark known and marked by multiple civilizations, each in their own tongue acknowledging its, let's call it, unique significance. The Book of Enoch, for those brave enough to actually read it, provides gritty details about the Watchers' landing site, and the Bible itself, sanitized as it may be, mentions Mount Hermon again and again. Deuteronomy 3 verses 8 to 9, for example, casually drops it as a crucial boundary marker, stating, "From Aroer, which is upon the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Hermon, which Hermon the Sidonians call Syrian, and the Amorites call it Shenir." And it's no coincidence this boundary marker is around the land of Canaan. Think about it. These watchers, these powers of evil, were essentially setting up shop, drawing their own cosmic line, in the very land that God would later choose to be Canaan, the Holy Land. It's almost like they were running interference, establishing their territory before the divine plan unfolded. And remember, the Book of Enoch, where we get the detailed account of their descent on Hermon, is considered older than parts of the Bible itself. So, this ancient text suggests these watchers were staking their claim in this region long before the Israelites even arrived, setting the stage for the brawls and conflicts to come as God's chosen people later had to fight to reclaim that very land. The Book of Enoch, for those brave enough to actually read it, provides gritty details about the Watchers' landing site, and the Bible itself, sanitized as it may be, mentions Mount Hermon again and again. Joshua 12 verse 1 further reinforces this boundary role. Now these are the kings of the country which the children of Israel smote, and possessed their land on the other side Jordan toward the rising of the sun, from the river Arnon unto Mount Hermon, and all the plain on the east. Psalm 133 verse 3 gets poetic, gushing about the dew of Hermon, painting a picture of lush fertility, almost mocking the dark events that unfolded there with its over-the-top abundance, declaring, as the dew of Hermon, and as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord commanded the blessing, even life forevermore. And then you stumble upon the Song of Songs 4 verse 8. Suddenly, it's not just dew and blessings anymore. Now, it's romanticized as a lover's lane of exotic beauty and wildness. Try to reconcile that with a fallen angel meetup spot. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shinir and Hermon, from the lion's dens, from the mountains of the leopards. See how jarring that shift is, from divine blessing to romantic invitation. On the same mountain, but hey, descriptions, right? And yet, even these wildly contrasting descriptions, twisted as they may seem in context, perfectly, almost eerily, match what we find in California. Now let's get to the numbers, the facts that make the experts sweat. The Mount Hermon in California, our real Mount Hermon, stands at a modest 584 feet, a seasoned veteran of geological time. Meanwhile, the pretender mountain in the modern Middle East. The one scholars in their infinite wisdom have slapped the Hermon label on, towers at a ludicrous 9,232 feet. 9,000 feet. Most people, bless their naive hearts, glance at these figures and bleat. See? The California mountain is a dwarf, too tiny to be biblical Mount Hermon.
Really? Say, congratulations, you played yourself.
And this, my friends, is precisely where their carefully constructed house of cards collapses. This is where cold, hard geology storms in and kicks down the door, proving our point with the force of a tectonic shift. Let me drop some geological truth on you, a nugget of knowledge those mainstream gatekeepers desperately hope you remain ignorant of. The oldest mountains on Earth, the OGs of peaks, are always shorter than the young upstarts. Why? One word, erosion. Think of it like this. Mountains are not immortal gods, they are geological sandcastles. Over millions upon millions of years, we're told by mainstream scientists, rain, ice, the relentless grind of nature's sandpaper, gradually, inevitably, mercilessly wears them down. The towering, arrogant mountains we gawk at today, those show-offs of the skyline, are actually the new money of mountain ranges, geological Johnny-come-latelys, formed by more recent, showier geological tantrums. This isn't some fringe theory whispered in back rooms. This is bedrock scientific fact, acknowledged by geologists who haven't sold their souls to the mainstream narrative. So when we observe that the California Mount Hermon is, shall we say, vertically challenged, this isn't a weakness in our argument. It's a slam dunk for authenticity. It's wearing its age like a badge of honor, weathered and wise, exactly as we would expect from a mountain ancient enough to have witnessed the cosmic drama described in texts that predate recorded history. That ridiculously tall mountain in the modern Middle East? Please. That's geological fresh paint, a recent formation screaming poseur, utterly, laughably impossible to be the original Mount Hermon. It's like mistaking a Botox reality TV star for a timeless icon. The real deal shows its age, and its power is in its history, not its superficial height. Ancient texts, if you dare to actually read them instead of just citing them, offer vivid, almost hallucinatory accounts of the plant life clinging to Mount Hermon. Scriptural scribblers, like the author of Ezekiel, in a rare moment of poetic accuracy, commend the noble trees of this area. While they might coyly avoid explicitly naming cypresses of Mount Hermon, Ezekiel 31 verse 8 in the King James Version, a translation ironically closer to the truth than modern sanitized versions thunders, the cedars in the garden of God could not hide him, the fir trees were not like his boughs, and the chestnut trees were not like his branches, nor any tree in the garden of God was like unto him in his beauty. This isn't just flowery language, it's a botanical shout, praising the unparalleled, almost unearthly splendor of Hermon's arboreal kingdom. And let's not forget historical breadcrumbs and geographical whispers from antiquity and later eras consistently point to a variety of tree species in this territory: pine, oak, poplar, a regular arboreal Noah's Ark. These weren't just background scenery. They were frequently documented, logged in historical accounts describing the natural environment and the resources, timber, anyone off the ancient region associated with Mount Hermon. Adding another layer to this vibrant tapestry, ancient Jewish liturgical poems, Piyutim from the 8th to 10th centuries, texts humming with ancient memory, portray the agricultural pulse of the Hermon area, specifically calling out the cultivation of vineyards on a mountain associated with fallen angels. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. These liturgical poems, composed for moments of sacred intensity, reflect the deep-rooted, long-standing presence of viticulture in the Hermon region as understood throughout history. And here's where it gets truly eerie. These very types of vegetation, cypress-like trees, pine, oak, poplar, and yes, even vineyards, as if the fallen angels had a taste for fine wine, are found thriving together in a botanical echo across continents, in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California, around our Mount Hermon. This isn't just a coincidence, folks. It's a botanical fingerprint, a striking convergence in plant life that screams for a deeper, more honest recognition of the enduring, almost re-emergent characteristics of this historically crucial landscape in a new setting. But hold on, because here comes the real bombshell, the mic drop moment, the Redwoods. These aren't just trees, people. These are titans, living monuments, the true Cedars of Lebanon mentioned in biblical texts, burning with a silent, ancient grandeur. And here's the secret the mainstream establishment prays you never uncover. Redwoods and cedars are, at their core, fundamentally the same damn tree. Botanically speaking, they're practically kissing cousins, both swaggering members of the conifer family Cupressaceae. In fact, scientists, those pesky truth seekers, have stumbled upon the inconvenient truth that these trees share nearly identical genetic structures and characteristics. Strip away the fancy Latin names and the botanical jargon, and you find they're practically clones from a shared ancient ancestor. The only real difference, the only thing separating these arboreal twins, is the labels that modern botanists, those masters of taxonomic sleight of hand, have slapped on them. Let me break this down with an analogy even a biblical scholar could grasp. Think of it like two siblings, born from the same ancient seed, sprung from the loins of the same primordial forest. They might sport slightly different hairstyles, maybe one prefers redwood bark and the other cedar needles, superficial differences, folks. But beneath the bark, in the very DNA of their being, they're from the same family, undeniably, irrevocably linked. That's exactly what we have with redwoods and cedars. They're basically siblings in the tree world, separated by continents, but united by ancient lineage. Modern scientists, bless their labeling-obsessed hearts, have given them different names, filed them under different categories, but genetically, in the language of life itself, they're almost identical. This isn't some crackpot theory cooked up in a basement. It's proven botanical science, peer-reviewed, documented, undeniable fact that mainstream historians, with their conveniently selective blindness, ignore. They have to ignore it because it blows their whole narrative to kingdom come. Think about it, really think about it. When ancient texts, vibrating with the echoes of forgotten ages, describe mighty cedars, cedars so impossibly grand they seem to graze the heavens, what makes more damn sense? The relatively modest, frankly underwhelming trees in the modern Middle East, struggling to survive on a scrubby hillside, or these towering giants of California, these redwood colossi that have stood sentinel for millennia, their crowns lost in the clouds, their roots delving into the very bones of the earth? Which image resonates with the mythic grandeur of ancient scripture? Which trees look like they could have witnessed the dawn of time? These redwoods, these true cedars, reach ages of up to 2,200 years. They were already ancient, gnarled veterans of time when the pyramids were just blueprints in some pharaoh's fevered dream. They are living, breathing libraries of history, silent witnesses to millennia of human folly and forgotten truths. And these redwoods, these true cedars, aren't just silent witnesses. They are active participants in a story far older than the Bible itself. Think about the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest written tales. What was Gilgamesh seeking in his legendary journey? Immortality, yes, but also something more tangible, something rooted in the very earth. The mighty cedars of the legendary cedar forest, guarded by the fearsome Humbaba. Ancient Mesopotamian texts place this cedar forest in the mountains of Lebanon, the very region now falsely associated with those scrubby, modern cedars of Lebanon. But consider this, Gilgamesh, in some versions of the epic, doesn't just seek cedars. He battles Humbaba on a sacred mountain, a mountain that some interpretations even identify as, wait for it, Mount Hermon. Could the epic itself, in its veiled mythological language, be pointing us to the true location? Could Gilgamesh's battles in the cedar forest, his quest for those godlike trees, actually be another echo, another coded reference to the redwood forests of California and our Mount Hermon, the real mountain of legend? The very idea that the scrubby, commercially rebranded trees, laughably called Cedars of Lebanon in the modern Middle East, are the majestic, awe-inspiring trees that thundered through ancient texts, needs a full-blown historical intervention. From this perspective, from the perspective of truth, the towering redwoods of California aren't just like biblical cedars. They are the true biblical cedars, the originals, the alpha and omega of arboreal majesty, deliberately, maliciously hidden by a sneaky, centuries-long act of historical and botanical trickery. Let's be blunt, folks. It's suggested, and the evidence is mounting, that America, not the manufactured, contrived old world of European self-congratulation and historical revisionism, is the real ancient land, the cradle of civilization, and the redwoods, dwarfing, humiliatingly surpassing the size and grandeur of those puny Middle Eastern cedars, are living, breathing, undeniable proof of this earth-shattering truth. When ancient scriptures, texts that haven't been fully scrubbed clean of the real story, talk about cedars so impossibly grand, so skyscraping they seem to touch the heavens, dating back to the dawn of time itself, the millennia-old redwoods, some of these giants already ancient when the pyramids were just a gleam in an architect's eye, fit this description with a terrifying perfection, while the younger, smaller, frankly pathetic trees in modern Lebanon, well, they just don't measure up. It's like comparing a chihuahua to a woolly mammoth and calling them the same species. A critical, honest look at tree ring data at the actual ages of the oldest cedars of Lebanon, not the marketing hype, challenges their flimsy authenticity. The largest known cedar of Lebanon, and largest is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, has a girth of approximately 14 meters. Even with a generous, wildly optimistic estimate of growth rate, this suggests an age of only a few hundred years at most, stretching credibility to its breaking point, perhaps approaching 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Cute. This is laughably, pathetically too young to have been a tree used, revered, mythologized in biblical times, as mentions of Cedars of Lebanon, real Cedars of Lebanon date back to around 1000 BCE and earlier. This isn't just a discrepancy. It's a gaping chasm of historical dishonesty, further underscoring the argument that the modern cedars of Lebanon are not the trees described in ancient texts, while the undeniable, breathtaking antiquity of California's redwoods is clear for anyone with eyes to see and a brain that hasn't been completely lobotomized by mainstream propaganda. Let's talk about motive, about who benefits from this historical sleight of hand. Consider the historical context, the ugly truth behind the curtain. European colonizers, those self-appointed arbiters of civilization arriving in America, stumbling upon the awe-inspiring redwood forests, the real cedars of Lebanon. And what did they do? They didn't marvel, they didn't worship, they appropriated. motivated by a toxic cocktail of greed, religious delusion, and a pathological need to rewrite history to center their own pathetic little European story. They launched a calculated, centuries-long project of geographical renaming, a brazen act of historical vandalism. This involved falsely, fraudulently naming the scrubby trees in the newly, and quite literally, dubbed Lebanon as Cedars of Lebanon, while simultaneously, and with equal malice, burying, obscuring, actively hiding the true identity, the true glory of the Californian Redwoods effectively, and with breathtaking audacity, stealing America's natural birthright, right down to the trees. This isn't just a mistake, folks. This act of deception, this historical heist, resonates with the same brazen, theatrical audacity as a cheap magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat and then, with a straight face, insisting it's a goddamn unicorn. And for centuries, the world has swallowed the lie hook, line, and sinker. Now the water systems, thankfully less easily manipulated than tree names, provide even more waterlogged evidence. Ancient texts, when they're not busy describing fallen angels, describe Mount Hermon as a crucial, life-giving source of water with springs gushing at its base, feeding a network of multiple rivers. The California Mount Hermon, nestled within the San Lorenzo River watershed, creates exactly this kind of hydrological symphony. The ancient descriptions of abundant dew, of life-sustaining water resources making the surrounding land fertile, aren't just poetic flourishes. They're hydrological blueprints, matching perfectly, undeniably, with the California location's actual hydrology. Climate patterns, often dismissed by those clinging to the Middle East myth, offer further, subtle yet damning evidence best understood not in sound bite-sized pronouncements, but through a lens of long-term geological and climatic processes. The California Mount Hermon, basking in a classic Mediterranean climate, characterized by mild, wet winters and warm, dry summers, mirrors the climatic descriptions from ancient texts associated with the Mount Hermon. Yes, those texts mention snow, sending the literalists into a frenzy of geographical denial.